Here be dragons. The first thing she remembered about the firm was not the staircase, though everyone remembered the staircase, nor the oil portraits, though the portraits had been arranged to make memory look hereditary. It was the smell of rain drying slowly from wool coats in the reception hall, a smell of weather being disciplined into professionalism. Outside, London had been washed that morning into its usual colour, a grey so old it seemed less a shade than a constitutional principle, and the taxis moved along Fleet Street with their patient black backs shining under the rain. Inside, there were lilies in a porcelain bowl, 3 receptionists who spoke in lowered voices, and a brass nameplate so polished that the building appeared to have been founded before language had become casual. People did not call it by its name unless they had business there. In conversation, in corridors, in the inns, in anxious cafes where junior lawyers sat over untouched soup, it was simply the firm. The words were never spoken with irony. The firm had advised empires before they became markets. It had drafted instruments whose consequences outlived the men who signed them. It possessed rooms where crises entered as noise and left as memoranda. And if some of its older partners believed that civilization itself was a kind of document management problem, no one who had seen its work was entirely able to disagree. The princess joined in the winter when the office windows became mirrors by 4 o'clock, and the associates learned to live under artificial suns. She was not called the princess then. Her name appeared on emails, passes, timesheets, and internal directories, but names inside the firm were provisional things, useful for routing documents and blame. The title came later, after someone in litigation saw her make an entire conference room fall silent by placing one finger on a paragraph in a draft skeleton argument, and observing, almost absently, that the case had been framed through the wrong doorway. There had been 16 people in the room. 3 partners, 4 senior associates, 2 counsel, 1 client, a man from communications, and several bright young lawyers whose faces had already learned the practiced neutrality of those who understand that fear is not a useful entry in a meeting note. On the table lay bundles with coloured tabs, annotated authorities, marked-up chronologies, and a faint snow of paper clips. The client had flown in from Geneva and wanted certainty. The partners wanted a plan. Counsel wanted more time. The room wanted an adult. The princess had been sitting beside the window, not because she had been placed there, but because she had arrived late from another meeting and taken the chair no one else wanted. She had read the draft while people spoke over it. Her eyes moved quickly, without theatrical concentration. She did not underline. She did not take notes. She merely turned the pages, occasionally returning to an earlier one as if correcting a piece of music only she could hear. When the senior partner asked whether she had any comments, he did so politely, with the soft indulgence reserved for gifted but junior persons whose remarks may be interesting but are not yet dangerous. She touched the 4th paragraph. "This assumes the decision is the refusal," she said. "It isn't." No one answered immediately. "The refusal is only where the decision became visible. The real decision happened earlier, probably when the internal classification changed. If we challenge the refusal, we lose on discretion. If we challenge the classification architecture, they have to explain the machinery." The client looked from one lawyer to another, sensing without understanding that the temperature of the room had altered. Counsel frowned. "We don't have evidence of an earlier classification." "No," she said, "but they do." That was the first time the old managing partner looked at her. He had entered the room 5 minutes before and taken no part in the discussion. He was not yet the global managing partner, though everyone knew he would become it because certain careers, like certain rivers, were understood only by looking at the landscape they had already cut through. He was old in the way powerful lawyers become old before their bodies do, with no wasted movement, no visible need to persuade, and an expression that made most people improve the quality of their sentences before speaking. He watched her as if a bird had flown through the glass. After the meeting, which ended not with agreement, but with a reorganization of reality around her remark, he found her in the corridor. The carpet there was blue and gold, worn almost invisibly by the passage of expensive shoes. "How did you see that?" he asked. She thought he was testing her, so she began to explain in the usual professional way, with references to the chronology, the disclosed correspondence, the statutory scheme, the pattern of institutional behavior, the difference between a consequence and a decision. He listened for perhaps 10 seconds. "No," he said. "How did you see it before you could explain it?" The question unsettled her because it was exact. She looked past him towards the glass doors of a meeting room where another team was arranging themselves around another crisis. "I don't know." He smiled then, not kindly, not unkindly, but with recognition. "Good," he said. "Don't waste it by trying too hard." For years afterwards, she misunderstood the warning as encouragement. The firm loved her gift because the firm knew what to do with gifts. It placed them in rooms, surrounded them with documents, charged them in 6-minute units, and allowed clients to mistake the institutional process for providence. The princess learned to move through matters faster than others could describe them. A dispute arrived with boxes of files and a panicked email from a general counsel. She saw the missing assumption before lunch. Regulator sent a notice written in neutral language. She could hear the hidden threat beneath the grammar. A witness statement seemed helpful. She knew it would collapse under the second question in cross-examination. A settlement offer looked generous. She saw the trap in the adjective. Nobody knew how she did it. She did not know it either. At first they asked. She tried to answer. She spoke of patterns, contradictions, pressure points, institutional incentives, procedural weather, the way one document leaned against another. She said that legal disputes were not chains but fabrics, and that the tear usually appeared where two complete fabrics had been stitched together by someone who did not believe in cloth. The trainees loved this and wrote it down. The partners did not. Clients liked results, not metaphors, and the firm possessed an ancient suspicion of explanations that could not be billed twice. Soon everyone stopped asking. It was easier to say she had judgment. Judgment was a noble word because it explained nothing while sounding like explanation. It allowed the firm to honor mystery without surrendering control. She became, in the internal mythology, one of those impossible lawyers who simply knew. She was sent into dying cases like a priestess into a cave. She emerged with a route, a risk, a sentence, an instruction. Sometimes she saved the matter. Sometimes she advised surrender so early that everyone felt cheated of drama, until 6 months later the opponent's disclosed documents proved that surrender had been the only intelligent victory available. The old partner, now the global managing partner, watched her ascent with a strange private attentiveness. He never praised her in public beyond what was useful. He never competed with her in the ordinary way, because he understood competition as something for people who needed witnesses. In closed rooms, however, their conversations had the quality of two mapmakers comparing coastlines neither had visited. "You saw the insolvency risk before the accountants," he said once, after a negotiation in which he had altered the entire settlement structure by noticing that one subsidiary's silence was too carefully maintained. "So did you," she replied. "Yes," he said, "but I knew why it mattered." She looked at him. He leaned back in his chair. Behind him the city was beginning to dissolve into evening, its towers turning blue and then black, its windows filling with the small domestic fires of people who had escaped offices less powerful than this one. "You think talent is power," he said. "It isn't. Talent is weather. Power is when a building has been constructed to make weather consequential." She remembered that sentence many years later, more clearly than any formal appraisal. The merger came in spring. There were emails about strategic alignment, expanded international capacity, sector depth, client synergies, and the future of global legal service delivery. In the corridors, people spoke of duplication. In the lifts, they spoke of lists. The firm absorbed another firm, larger in some countries, weaker in others, filled with partners who brought revenue, clients, resentments, habits, and their own small weather systems. For several weeks there was a smell of cardboard boxes and expensive anxiety. Names disappeared from doors. Practice groups were renamed. Committees multiplied like mold in damp rooms. The princess was not worried. This was her first mistake, though she did not know it at the time. She believed that usefulness protected a person. She believed, because the firm had allowed her to believe it, that excellence created its own jurisdiction. She had not yet understood that institutions love exceptional people only while they are legible within institutional need. Her dismissal was conducted with elegance. There was no cruelty in the meeting, no raised voice, no visible pleasure. The language was impersonal enough to be mistaken for weather. Integration, strategic duplication, role alignment, future fit. She sat across from two partners and someone from HR whose compassion had been professionally trained to leave no fingerprints. Rain tapped lightly against the window. Someone had placed a glass of water before her, though she had not asked for it. The document on the table was clear. The decision behind it was not. For one suspended moment she felt the old gift rise, swift and cold. The meeting was not about duplication, it was not about fit, it was not even about cost. There was another architecture beneath the words. She could sense it, as she had sensed hidden classifications, concealed decisions, fragile authorities, false chronologies. But this time the architecture concerned her, and self-knowledge distorted the instrument. She signed nothing. The global managing partner did not attend the meeting. Later, as she walked out through the reception hall with a box containing 3 books, a fountain pen, her mug, and a framed print of an old celestial chart, she saw him standing on the balcony above the staircase. He did not come down. He merely inclined his head, almost imperceptibly, as if acknowledging not an injustice but a completed move. Outside, London was absurdly bright. The rain had stopped. The wet pavements held the sky in broken pieces, and for the first time in years she was in the city at 3 o'clock in the afternoon with nowhere to go. Professional exile does not arrive at once. It comes politely, wearing the face of delay. A recruiter says the market is complicated. A partner at another firm says they are very impressed but currently reviewing internal needs. A former client says, with genuine embarrassment, that procurement would require a platform appointment. Someone who once called at midnight for help with an injunction does not return a message. Invitations become coffee. Coffee becomes silence. At first she believed the world had simply become inefficient. Then she heard the rumors. Lucky. Difficult to integrate. Overrated. Brilliant in flashes, but not reliable. Never quite as exceptional as people thought. A product of the firm's platform. Someone who mistook institutional amplification for individual genius. The words traveled without needing a carrier. That was the genius of reputational harm in a small profession. It did not require publication in the vulgar sense. It moved through raised eyebrows, private lunches, careful omissions, sudden hesitations. It entered the bloodstream of opportunity and altered decisions before reasons were written down. No one repeated the words to her directly. They were too intelligent for that. Instead, she encountered their effects. The old partner had not destroyed her with accusation. He had reduced her to chance.